Holy Sigma! Bless this ravaged body!
Hey there, my name is Alex, I am the Silvermont, and here's my thoughts on Warhammer, Vermintide 2. Just want to point this out, this isn't a sponsored video or paid for promotion, anything like that. It's just a game I've been playing a lot recently, and I've enjoyed it a lot, so I thought I'd share it with you guys. And well, what is Vermintide 2? Well, in a nutshell, it's Left 4 Dead in a Warhammer setting. There's 5 characters to choose from: a human soldier, a human inquisitor, an elf, a dwarf, and a fire grandma. And my cat, who you can perhaps hear behind me. He's not actually playable. A fact he seems really upset by. If you've not played Left 4 Dead, then let me give you the quick rundown. The game is split up into a bunch of levels, which have a loose order to them, but generally can be done in any order you so choose. The goal of each level is typically just to make it to the end point without dying. Teamwork is very important, sticking together and cooperating, sharing healing items and so forth. Whereas Left 4 Dead focused on guns, with melee being more of a thing in Left 4 Dead 2, melee I would say is the main draw here in Vermintide. Everyone has a ranged weapon apart from one specific class, but ranged weapons are powerful but often with limited ammo, and the melee is a lot more in-depth than Left 4 Dead's. As you make your way through each level, enemies will randomly spawn, in a very similar way to the AI director. If you're doing really well, it might do more hard enemies. If you're not doing so well, it might do less, but the main thing is that it's largely randomized when it comes to enemy placement and spawning. So even though the levels themselves remain largely the same, each playthrough of them will be slightly different. Your basic hordes of enemies will spawn now and then, attempting to overwhelm your party with sheer numbers and, importantly, distract you. If your screen is full of like 100 rats that you're pummeling, you might struggle A, to see that one of your teammates has been, captured or incapacitated, and B, struggle to reach them. So, although the hordes aren't that much of a threat by themselves, they're something you have to get good at dealing with for the secondary threats that they represent. Then you have what Left 4 Dead would call special infected, enemies that are designed to harass your team and split you up or otherwise bamboozle you. For example, there's a rat with a large hook. He'll grab one of your party and attempt to drag them away, isolating them from the team. There's an assassin rat who basically is identical to hunters from Left 4 Dead. He'll pounce and deal rapid damage until knocked off. And then there's bosses, larger enemies who have lots of health. The enemies are made up of Ratmen, the Skaven, and the Northland the Humans, the Chaos Forces, the Rothelms. It would be nice to see them add greenskins, that is, orcs and goblins, in a future DLC or sequel, but the enemy variety is good enough, I think. Apparently the first Vermintide only had Skaven, which I could see being a little bit samey after a bit. I think adding the Northlanders, the Chaos people, into it helps keep it fresh and mix it up. One big difference between Vermintide 2 and Left 4 Dead is that your character actually does matter in Vermintide. The survivors are all identical in Left 4 Dead, other than, their voice lines and appearance. Every character plays identically. In Vermintide 2, the characters have abilities, traits, perks, and all that stuff, which I think is a cool feature, but one they could have gone even further with. Every character has 3 subclasses they can choose between, and each subclass has one ability they can use. The Pyromancer Sienna, for example, shoots out a flaming ball that seeks enemies. The Wizard Sienna has a teleport that leaves a trail of fire, and the Unchained Sienna explodes. The Ranger Veteran Dwarf has a smoke bomb, whereas the Bounty Hunter Victor shoots a powerful piercing shot. As well as those active abilities, which you might liken to ultimates in something like Overwatch. They have various passives, as well as talents you can choose upon levelling up. Take the Ironbreaker Dwarf, for example. One of his passive abilities is that every 20 seconds, I believe it is, he will completely absorb one hit. So if he gets hit, he'll take no damage, and then after 20 seconds that ability will recharge and it will happen again automatically. The talents are, well, if you've played World of Warcraft recently, the talent system is almost identical to that. Every 5 levels you have a choice between 3 different passive abilities, and these usually range from things like more health to reduced cooldowns and getting temporary health upon killing an enemy, things like that. But I said I would have liked it if they took this further. What do I mean by that? Well, to use another popular game that I mentioned earlier, characters in Overwatch have usually 3 abilities, and I think that would work well in Vermintide. Instead of 1 class ability, I think everyone should have 2 or even 3. The Ironbreaker Dwarf currently has 1 ability that taunts all nearby enemies and reduces his damage taken and gives him infinite stamina for blocking. That's great, but it's also a little situational. What if he had the ability that gives him a huge defensive boost on, you know, the cooldown that it is now, but what if he also had maybe a 5 or 10 second cooldown taunt ability? For example, he could smack the ground in front of him, and any enemies that are hit by that cone are taunted and will hit him. That would make him a lot more interesting and versatile to play, if you ask me. As of right now, aggro or threat generation is largely damage based, which of course puts him at somewhat of a disadvantage because he's not a damage dealing class. I mean, he can kill things, he does damage, he does kill things, but tanking isn't like, say, in an MMO in this game. It's more like you tank things by doing the most amount of damage and sort of your positioning. So in terms of actual tanking, the Slayer Dwarf is a lot better because his damage output is so high that he can actually keep things focused on him. The Handmaiden Elf has an ability to lunge forwards, dealing bleeding damage to all enemies in her path. What if she also had a wide, crowd-clearing spin attack? You know, there's a lot of ways you could take this, and it doesn't need to be an excessive number of abilities, but I think 2 or 3 would be great. Having 1 is nice, but they can definitely go more here to add even more into the game, I think. The basic gameplay, hitting things with your melee weapons, it feels good. I'm more of a fan of the melee than the first-person shooting, which is really funny to me because if you've watched some of my other videos, you'll probably be aware that I hate first-person melee in, like, every game almost that it's been in. I just don't enjoy it. I think third-person melee is inherently better, and I still think that. But Vermintide, I think they handled the melee well. You see, when you're playing Vermintide and you have a horde on you, the first person plays into that because it becomes not so much about your positioning and your depth perception and more about your screen is completely full of enemies. If you pulled that back to third person, you would be able to see a lot better. But in first person, it becomes more about, wow, I have to clear my screen from all this stuff. But in general, I think the melee works well. You have light attacks and heavy attacks, or charged attacks. And when you block, you have a stamina meter, which is drained every time, you know, you block an attack. I think if you block an attack at the last instant, it gives you like a super block or a parry, but I'm not entirely sure how that works. When you're blocking, you can do a shove, and then you can follow that shove up with a unique push attack or shove attack. And charged attacks usually are actually different to your light attacks. For example, let's take the two-handed hammer for the Ironbreaker. The light attacks for that are generally quite fast, but they're also usually sort of overheads, so they're good for single targets. The first attack in the combo chain in particular is a completely vertical up to down swing, which is amazing because it will almost always hit the target on the head. So you can do that, and then you can reset your combo chain by blocking, so you can, you know, light attack, block, light attack, and you have a really good thing going there. Whereas if you keep doing light attack, you'll do your overhead, and then you'll do a slightly sort of diagonal and then a sideways swing. Whereas the charged attack is a big sweeping left to right, and then right to left, and you can keep chaining that indefinitely, which is amazing for hordes. because, you know, you're just going to hit everything in front of you. And because it's a hammer, it's not going to do as much damage as an axe might, but you're going to send the enemies flying. And guess what? If an enemy's flying through the air, or like, you know, on the floor trying to get up, they're not hitting your friends. Which is why the two-handed hammer is currently my favourite weapon for the Iron Breaker. It's not going to get the most kills, but it can break shields as well, and it just knocks the enemies all over the place, which means that my teammates can then, you know, be attacking them whilst they're down. And importantly, they're not attacking whilst they're stumbling all over the place. Ranged weapons have some variety to them. You know, there's crossbows, there's weapons you can zoom in with like snipers, there's shotguns, there's infinite ammo weapons for the Iron Breaker and the Witch. And overall, yeah, the ranged is fine. I just don't find myself using it very often because, again, I mostly play the Iron Breaker Dwarf. And some people will say the shotgun for him, the Grudge Raker, is the best, and it probably is. I just like the fire pistols because A, I like the sort of concept of them, B, I like that they have infinite ammo, and C, I like that it means I don't need to take any ammo, and, you know, it leaves more ammo for my teammates. There is a progression and loot system in the game. At the end of each level, you know, each mission, each stage, you will receive a chest, and you also get a chest when you actually level up. Oh, and when you reach level cap, you will keep leveling. It will be like, level cap is 30, right? After you level up, you'll be 30, and then in brackets, +1, +2, and so forth. So it's basically a way for you to keep getting commendation chests, even though you reach level cap on that character. But in each stage or mission, you pick up, I mean, you can pick up, it's optional, there's collectibles that you can pick up, and they upgrade the quality of the chest you'll get at the end of the mission, which then contains 3 items for your character, which operate on a very similar rarity system to many games use, you know, green, blue, rarity, you know, uncommon, common, rare, epic, exotic, veteran, blah blah blah. These have the equivalent of an item level, which means you can gradually make your character's overall strength higher as you improve their gear and take them to the level cap of 30. I believe there is a hidden chest EXP system as well. For example, the more chests you open, the better your chests will be. So let's say you beat a mission and you open a chest and that gives you 100 chest EXP. Whereas if you pick up all the collectibles that upgrade that chest, it might be 200 EXP. So basically think of it as a bar that is filling up for your chests and they're leveling up. And as the chests level up, they give you higher level things, which means it's bound more to your account than that specific character. At least I believe that's how it works. There is no official documentation to this, but that seems to be the case. The game has 4 difficulty settings, I believe. It's Recruit, Veteran, Champion, and Legend. And of course they give you better rewards, but they also get exponentially harder. And then you also have optional challenges called Deeds, which they add modifiers to the mission, such as more enemies, no item pickups. A little bit like the skulls from Halo, if you remember those from a few years back. The game also has workshop support on Steam. Workshop support is basically, if you don't know what it is, let's say you buy a game on Steam, and then you go into the community part and there's something called Workshop. In there you'll find player-made mods that are really easy to use. You literally click, like, subscribe on the mod and then it's in your game. That's all you have to do. Modding is usually quite simple, but at times it can be a bit complex for the average Joe. So the Steam Workshop is a feature I personally really love, as it makes modding so simple and so easy to use. You can just browse through mods, click ones that look cool, and then bam, they're in your game. Now, as of right now, it's very limited. There are 2 ways to play Vermintide 2 in a nutshell. You have the official servers, where you can't use mods, and then you have the modded servers where you can use mods. Mods can apply to be sanctioned, which means they would work even on, the official servers. But right now, time of writing, which is early July, there's no sanctioned mods whatsoever. But of course, the workshop itself is still very new as of time of writing, so I'm hoping some of these more interesting mods will be sanctioned as time goes by. We'll just have to wait and see, but I do think workshop support is a great feature, and it's nice to have the option. Now, the issue of repetition does come into play here. If you found Left 4 Dead repetitive, this will have similar issues. There is, a bit more to it because, it has more progression, but you can play through all of the levels in a few short hours of play. There is around 13 missions in the game, I think. Don't quote me on that, but it's around 13. So yeah, you could, in theory, go through all of them pretty fast. Let's say each level takes 20 minutes. Of course, it's going to be more or less, depending, but that's the average. As someone who initially thought Left 4 Dead would be too short and repetitive and never bought it, only to be cajoled into picking it up a few years later, and then promptly putting hundreds and hundreds of hours into it, it's not an issue for me. The way I see it, if you have some friends who are like-minded, Vermintide and Left 4 Dead are both extremely fun to play. Even if you were kind of doing the same thing over and over, it's a fun co-op game, and there is a lot of stuff to learn. I would say both Left 4 Dead and Vermintide have... I'm not really sure how to phrase this. They're easy to pick up, hard to master. The very basic principle in both games is stick together with your team. But there's a lot of things you will gradually learn about, weapon combo chains and positioning, placement, shortcuts through the levels, just general experience and stuff, There is a slight competitive element in that you can compete to get more kills, and I'm gonna be honest, I don't like the scoreboard showing up at the end of the mission telling everyone how many kills they got, because it's different in Left 4 Dead because every character is the same, but in Vermintide, some of the characters are much better at killing than others, but it doesn't mean they're more important. For example, the Ironbreaker that I really like, I think I do a pretty damn good job at keeping enemies off my teammates, providing an anchor for the team. Quite a lot of the time I've been the only one left standing because everyone else has died, and I bring I bring the match back by reviving everyone else. I mean, it doesn't really bother me too much, but I feel like they could tweak the scoreboard to be less damage oriented, because a lot of players, randoms they'll hunt for these green circles at the end of a map and be like, oh yeah, look how amazing I am, how you guys suck, you didn't kill anything. So it's not a huge issue, but it adds a slight competitive element, which is good in some ways because some healthy competition is good. The damage dealers, they should, to some extent be competing with each other. Some friendly competition to continuously improve upon their gameplay. They should always be striving to outdo each other. But at the same time, yes, it can be a bit of a nuisance. As of right now, I'm curious to see where the devs take this game. I never played the first one, although I was tempted to pick it up now and then. The second just seems to be an overall upgrade in just about every way. Of course, I've been playing the Steam version. I believe they have plans to take it to at least Xbox and maybe PS4. I'll be interested to see what sort of DLC they add. Judging from the first game, I'm guessing it's going to be mostly extra missions and maps. And I also want to see what mods people come up with. If they have the ability for player-made maps and missions that they, sanction and put in the official game, that would add a lot of replay value, and I would be thrilled to see that. I can really suggest Vermintide 2. If you have a friend to play it with, then yeah, great. If you have 3 friends to play it with, as it's 4-player, even better. It's a lot more fun than playing with randoms, and it's also a lot better when you can communicate. There is voice chat and text chat in the PC version, but again, it's better to play with friends. I don't think I would suggest picking it up if you don't have anyone to play it with, because you're not going to get as much out of the game. On that note, I quite often try and host Left 4 Dead or Vermintide 2 in my channel's Discord if you want to get in on that. But until next time, I hope this video was fun or entertaining, and maybe you'll give the game a go. If you have any questions not covered here, ask them down below in the comments, and I'll get back to you ASAP. Until next time, take care, you wassocks.